Welcome to Fantasy Football Hub. Today I'm joined by FPL Heisenberg, aka Wes, to review one of the most successful bench boosts so far that I have seen. Gameweek 29 is only halfway gone, but Wes, so far, it's looking pretty good. Let's have a look through it, but how's it been so far?
Yeah, it's been a good game week so far. I'm on a green arrow. I took a big gamble this week with a minus 16, which I will explain a bit later.
We need to get into that.
Yeah, it wasn't... there's a few things I need to explain about that. I think I was off the back of 2 green arrows as well, so just straight off the bat, it wasn't like, I've got a red arrow, I need to take a big hit to sort of get rid of a load of crap players or anything like that. I actually got rid of players that I didn't want to get rid of necessarily, but it was more about who I was bringing in rather than who I was taking out.
Wow. So, 79 points, as you can see on screen, but let's first of all, before we even get into the transfers, let's have a look at this bench, because so far, it's doing very, very well. Kind of summed up by the Pinnock goal, I would say. Everyone has returned for you. How's it been?
Yes. Yeah, the bench boost has been very good. And I think I was banging on about this on video a few weeks ago about how in game week 27, there was a lot of people saying, why not bench boost this week? Arsenal had Fulham away and I think they did okay. And my bench was, fairly Arsenal heavy that week, given that they had a single and a lot of others had doubles. And I had someone like Ward, but I think my bench that week would have only got 18, whereas this week it's got 25 already. And I think when I posted this on, and that's before fixtures to come, I posted this on Twitter and someone said actually it's probably 2 points higher because if I'd have actually had to make the decision between my goalkeepers this week, technically I'd have probably gone Brighton keeper because of their fixtures being better with Brentford
that's
at
an
home.
Interesting one, yeah.
It was Brentford at home, wasn't it? And Bournemouth away, whereas Brentford's fixtures were Man United away and Brighton away. So I guess that makes sense. And I guess if you are picking the worst players possible for your bench, then I would have swapped them. But I literally, because I was bench boosting, I sort of put my worst outfield players on the bench so I could get a fair score. I didn't really think about the keepers. Steele's like a cheap keeper. So I guess maybe 2 more points. But either way, I'm very happy so far. Shah, I don't know if you watched the Newcastle Man United game, but Shah could have scored late on and a couple of other chances as well. Yeah. So that was quite a frustrating game for me because I actually had Isaac who played quite well but didn't get a return. I went big on the Man United players who didn't do well. I'm the captain. So although I got the Shah points, that was a bit of a frustrating game. But and I definitely can't. Steele and Pinnock were fairly luck-orientated points, especially Steele getting an assist. You don't really bring in a keeper for an assist. With Pinnock, I did tweet about how I used Hub's Opta-Stats to decide between Pinnock, me, or Henry 3 or 4 weeks ago. It'll be fairly hard on my Twitter page if people want to check that tweet out. But the stats basically pointed towards Pinnock and the fact he was cheaper than me and Henry. Obviously, I acknowledge that I've got a huge slice of luck with Pinnock because he's scored 2 goals in 5 games? 2 goals in certainly a short period of game weeks because obviously they've had doubles. So absolutely, I didn't predict 2 goals in this short period of time. But I didn't know from, I think when we all watch enough football, you don't need stats necessarily to tell you that Haaland's a good FPL pick, that Rashford is or whatever. It's really obvious, those sort of players. But before I did my wildcard in week 26, if someone said to me, who's the biggest goal threat from the Brentford defenders, I just wouldn't have known. I don't watch enough 90 minutes of Brentford's defense. And when I do watch Brentford, I'm probably keeping my eye on Tony a lot more than their sort of defensive assets. So when I actually came to make that decision, I realised I didn't actually have the knowledge in my own brain to do so. And again, players like Trippier or Trent over the years, Chilwell, Shaw, they're quite obviously attacking players from when you watch them. It's less obvious which Pinnock versus me, I literally couldn't tell you who had the better XG out of those two. And it happened to be Pinnock. He was a bit cheaper. So I got him and I called it on Twitter that I put myself in a position to get that luck with those goals.
Yeah. And that's no slight on you or anyone else that doesn't watch Brentford defenders, by the way.
Yeah.
That's just a fact. And when I was chatting to the current world number 1, Ali, the other day, I asked him, do you prefer watching games or looking at stats? And he said that as much as, of course, if you can watch all the games, sure, that's a great thing to do. Nobody has the time or even the capability to watch 10 games per week. So when it comes to players like a Brentford defender, you're just not going to know these sort of things without the stats, unless you're a Brentford fan or you're just crazy and you watch it all, which fair enough if you do, but you're absolutely right. You have to use stats a lot of the time to fill in the gaps that your eyes physically cannot see. But let's talk now about those transfers, because I'm trying to think back and I've not rewatched our video, but Did you ever mention the possibility of doing a -16?
I don't think so. And a few things on this topic. It wasn't. I didn't set out to take a -16, but I also never capped myself on. When I posted on Twitter that I did a -16, a lot of people came out saying, "Oh, I don't mind a -8 or a -12, but -16 is too much." But I don't think, an arbitrary or whatever the word is, sort of figure, is ever too much. So, for example, if I'd already used my bench boost, maybe I wouldn't have taken. Well, yeah, I'd have definitely left Ward to rot. But I have a bench boost to play, so why would I leave Ward there, guaranteeing me to get because we knew he'd lost his place, guaranteeing myself 0 points there. Where for just a -4 on top of my original transfers, I can get in someone like Steele who got 4 points. What other keepers did well this week? Martinez from Villa. If I'd have gone for him, he got like 11 points, I think, or something crazy. So lots of keepers. And even if Steele blanked 2 games in a row, 2 points, I make my money back anyway. So worst case scenario, I break even likelihood, or maybe, if a lot of goals get conceded, I know that Steele could have got, maybe 1 point in both games. Fine. I lose 2 points. I can live with that. But you want to roll the dice here. We saw Steele get a big score against, can't remember who it was, a couple of games ago, maybe Crystal Palace. Yeah, he got a big score then. So what I'm trying to get is players can get big scores. So why leave someone like Ward out? Now, the thing that made my transfers difficult this week is I took out the likes of Kane, Saka, Martinelli, Zinchenko, and Ward. They were my 5 transfers out, and I didn't want to get rid of those players. They didn't return very big this week, so I got away with it in that regard. But that's where the risk was. That's what nearly stopped me taking this -16. But instead, I did go through with it. I wanted to attack the double game weeks this week. So short term, I bought myself 6 extra fixtures for this -16.
Yeah.
I took out 4 fixtures, I gained 10. And not only this week, every player I bought in has a future double game week, whereas the Tottenham and Spurs players don't. So I bought in Isaac, who's got a double game week this week, obviously, and in the future. Nearly went Solanke, but that extra fixture for Isaac. And I really like the look of Isaac in the last few games. So I went for him, and he could have got some returns against Man United, quite an unlucky one. But basically, in terms of fixtures wise, I bought in players who all had a double this week: Salah, Isaac, 2 United players, and Steele. And all those players I bought in have at least 1 extra double game week in either 34 and or 36/7. So, although obviously United players are blank so far, they've got an extra fixture at home to Brentford in this double game week, and they're going to have another double game week. Another 2 double game weeks. Same with the Brentford keeper. The Brighton keeper Steele, and Isaac set to have a double in either 36 or 37. So I've got, my theory was, like I said, it wasn't just for the short term. It was beneficial short term fixtures wise, but it's also beneficial in 34/36/37. Are we free hitting in 32? So what I can do now is, instead of, some people might take a -4 or -8 last week, and then in the future double game weeks for, to build towards those, might take in between now and the end of the season. Like I said, someone might have just taken a -4 or -8, and then they'll take a few more minus hits, and then it will be a total -16 from now to the end of the season. My plan is to not take any more hits now, because I've set myself up well for the doubles, and I can even now have the luxury of potentially swapping between double game week players. So let's say, United didn't look great against Newcastle, for example. If they have a couple of bad games or whatever, when it does come to their doubles, maybe I'll swap Fernandes for Grealish, because in 34 onwards, I think City are going to have 2 doubles. So I'm not actually locked into these players, but I'm now set up where I can, like I say, I can jump between these players, or I can build for the other doubles in 34, 36, 37, and have loads of double game week players, which I'm a big fan of double game week players, and I want to have them in 34 onwards. I want those double game week players. So why not do it this week when the likes of the Arsenal boys and Kane had a single game week? Yes, I really love Kane as an asset, really consistent, and love him as a player. But it just, something had to give. So I just got rid of those really good single game week assets, the Arsenal boys and Spurs. They will get points, of course, from now until the end of the season. But I'm hoping the extra fixtures I've bought myself will pay dividends over the next 5-6 weeks.
Yeah, it's an interesting one when you actually look at the players themselves that you've let go. Obviously, top quality players. Yeah. And it's one of those, because I do agree with you. You've already taken that hit now, so now that's gone, And as you're saying, you can now choose to do what you want with your future transfers. Whereas someone like me who didn't do that and didn't get in players that I know I'm going to want down the line, I'm going to have less of an opportunity to flip from one to the other because I'm going to need to get in those players anyway. Whereas you're kind of already locked in, which is good.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I think no problem. Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's fine either way. So, for example, I could have held Saka and Kane, and just done say -8, and I kept saying to people that I help on WhatsApp and stuff like that some you might not have the appetite for this -16. It's not for everyone. There's no right or wrong way with this. There's no if someone came back to me with an argument of why they should keep players like Saka and Kane and take less of a minus this week, I'd say absolutely, that's a very solid argument.
Yeah.
And that's what you should do if it's right for your team and your strategy. Me at my rank of around 2 to 4K, I think it was before this game week started. I wanted to roll the dice, I wanted to gamble. And yeah, hopefully it pays off both this week and in the future for me. But like I said, there's no right or wrong. If you've taken, but what I didn't like is people's reasons for -16 is too much. It's like, well,
yeah, you're right.
It's
every move in isolation.
That thought process, that thought process I didn't really like, and I didn't agree with that. But if you didn't want to make those moves for another reason, like I said, maybe you think Kane and Saka outscore the likes of Salah and Isaac, for example, my replacements, even despite those extra double game weeks, then absolutely fine. You could be right, and they might do so, and I might end up with egg on my face. But yeah, like I said, I wanted to attack those doubles. I knew I'd want to do it in the future. I'd end up probably taking minus hits over the course of the next few weeks. So why not do it this week? Get 15 double game week players in. Good for the short term and hopefully good for the long term. And I basically was sort of rolling the dice, keeping my fingers crossed for some luck in terms of low scores from Kane in my 3 Arsenal assets, which kind of worked. And then also hold fingers crossed for some luck in terms of the players I bought in doing well, which they haven't done. It's been a bit of a mixed bag.
Only halfway there, no? And we've still got the second half of fixtures to go.
Yeah, and only halfway there. So even with appearance points and maybe a return or two from one of them, should at least break even on that -16. I'd be more than happy to just break even on that -16 because, like I said, I've then essentially done those transfers for free almost because it's paid itself back, and then they're in place for the load of double game weeks. But like I said, United's form is actually worrying me a little bit now. Do I want Fernandes in for the doubles? But like I said, now I don't have to worry about. I've got so many double game week players in for all those doubles later on in the season. I can switch between a Fernandes to a better double game week asset in 34. Should I believe that's the correct course of action in that game week?
Sure. I think Steele alone, that the transfer of Steele alone kind of epitomizes what you're saying. You had to take a hit for that, but you knew that you were going to at least get. Well, in theory, you should have got some points back.
Yeah.
In the knowledge that he may well get more than 4 points, and obviously the second game hasn't happened yet, but he's already got 4 points. So that looks very worthwhile. And yeah, absolutely every hit in isolation, because although you are losing all those points at once, every transfer is individual and can have its own merits. So I completely agree with the logic there. Okay then, so we're halfway through the game week, of course, but it's looking very good so far. 79 with the -16, but obviously, as you say, still 15 games to go. Just clocked it there, yeah. Full double team. It's looking great. And obviously a lot of good fixtures as well for those players that you brought in, the likes of the United players. Good home fixture, could do really well there for you. Let's move on now to the upcoming game week, because I want to get your initial thoughts on your team. Do you have any transfers planned? And especially captaincy as well, because I don't think it's obvious anymore when we're talking about the form of Man United. So what are your thoughts for 30?
Yeah, it is really tough, isn't it? And in terms of transfers, the one that a lot of people do, and it made a lot of sense for myself as well, was to do Tony to, or penciled in at least, Tony to Haaland. I saved enough money in the bank to do so. I've got 4.6 in the bank, so I can move Tony to Haaland if I want to. But it's now that question of, do we want to do that? Tony's form in and of itself, despite his, he's got no more double game weeks left this season. And he's obviously had a lot of double game weeks just gone. But he's getting goals and returns. His season-long consistency is up there with the likes of Kane and Haaland. Not obviously quite to that level, but for his price.
Absolutely.
Performing really well. Do we want to now do that? Do we want to tie up that money and lose a good asset in Tony? Maybe, maybe not. Do we move out someone like Watkins. I think I can afford Watkins to Haaland as well, just about. Now, again, Watkins' form post World Cup is right up there with anyone really. So do we want to move him on, especially before Forest at home this week? Probably not. So it's a difficult one. But do we, if we know, if we get news of Haaland in team training, there's probably going to be some leaks about it, like there seems to be with the City team and stuff like that. So if we know he's starting, it's going to take a brave FPL manager to not have Haaland in your team for it's Southampton away, isn't it?
Yeah, Southampton away. The thing that I think is a little bit, it kind of gives a little bit more credence to not going with Haaland. I think it's harder for you because you don't have Kane, and I think he's a good alternative captain. So I'm not entirely sure what you do with captaincy. So we'll get your thoughts on that in a second. But as you mentioned, the fact of the matter is he's genuinely been injured. We all thought it was maybe an international break injury, but he didn't play the last game, so he does have an injury. And they're playing against Bayern Munich on the Tuesday, and so he's not going to play back-to-back 90 minutes if he's just coming back from an injury. I just don't see it. So for me, and maybe this is a little bit foolish, but at the moment I'm thinking that his maximum amount of minutes in that Southampton game, it can't be too many more than 60. So I'm not sure. And especially if Tony doesn't get that yellow, he's in great form against his old club, Newcastle. It could be one of those where you get him in, you get Haaland in, captain him, and really the play would have been just to settle, maybe even roll and captain someone else. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a really, really tricky one. And like you said, the Tony, I should have mentioned that when I was speaking about Tony a minute ago, the Tony yellow situation is obviously a big one because it's
that's a
two-game suspension. It is, yeah. So I think a lot of people were thinking is when they pencil this Tony thing in, everyone keeps saying, is a 2-game suspension waiting to happen. There's the betting scandal thing that I guess could drop at any time in terms of a lengthy ban for that. So, and I guess if that did happen post deadline one day, that would obviously really scupper people. But so in terms of transferring him out, there's less fear between getting rid of, let's say, even if he isn't banned, if you did transfer Tony out, maybe he picks up a yellow against Newcastle this week, and then you can kind of sleep easy that the fact that you've transferred out a player who's you'd have had to take out anyway. So yeah, Tony out, despite his form, does make a lot of sense because of all the those suspensions hanging over his head. But yeah, it's going to be difficult. Haaland, for me, captaincy-wise, with United's, on paper, United at home to Everton would probably look there. Everton and the Dyche a bit of a different animal. Everton and the Dyche away from home, though, still not as, they're much more a home team, aren't they? So will United bounce back? I don't know. I guess if Rashford puts in and United, let's say they demolish Brentford and there's some points galore there for the United players, then I guess it's there for an easy captaincy for me to go to Rashford should Haaland still be injured. But yeah, it's a tricky one because Haaland isn't just a great transfer in now. I think we're both free hitting 32, aren't we? When City blank. So for us, if we do get Haaland back, we're getting him in for good single game week fixtures, and then we're getting him in for 2 double game weeks in 34 onwards. So that's why he's so appealing. Someone like Julian, it would be kind of nice. Not that I wish an injury on anyone, but if we knew Haaland was out for a long period of time, we could go for Alvarez, but obviously we can't do that either. So very, very tricky. And like you said, the Bayern Munich game midweek's interesting. Will Pep want him, as he hasn't played a lot of football recently? If you think about, he went away with the international team, didn't he? But then he left that camp due to injury and he hasn't played since. So when was the last time Haaland actually played a game of football?
I see what you mean. Needs to get fresh again.
Does he want rhythm?
Yeah.
Does he want to play Haaland 90 minutes against Bayern Munich after not playing at all against Southampton? It's tricky.
Yeah. 100%.
It is tricky. Maybe he does want him to play if he's back if he's fully fit from his injury. Maybe he does want 90 minutes in his legs before Bayern. It's very hard to predict, and predicting Pep especially has always been tricky. We've always thought. I remember early on in the season, someone like Foden was absolutely flying for form-wise, scoring hat-tricks, scoring goals left, right, and centre, and then all of a sudden he gets left out the side like 5 Premier League games in a row or something stupid. So yeah, he's notoriously difficult to predict Pep. With Haaland this season, he has been fairly consistent in terms of playing him quite a lot. Actually, that was my pre-season doubt with Haaland, was how Pep would actually use him and rotate him and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a difficult one. And I think the key takeaway for everyone is don't do Tony to Haaland now. you have to wait for training ground pictures, news leaks, Pep's comments, stuff like that, I think.
See, I'm not entirely sure that he doesn't start the rotation of Haaland now, just because of those. Because this is why he was brought in, right? This is the crunch period of the season. Now, I think the difference is that they're having to go for it more in the league than they may have envisaged. Maybe not, but but he was brought in to win the Champions League in theory, and this is it now. And we have a lot of games back to back. This could be the start. Alvarez in great form as well. I don't know.
Yeah, so that was what makes it difficult, and that's what's going to be a tricky one for the double game weeks as well, because we're obviously going to want Haaland for those doubles. But is he even going to be the best captaincy option in those doubles? I know I'm getting ahead of. We don't have to worry about that
right now. It's true, though.
But,
it's true.
So yeah, it's really tricky this week. I think for me in my setup, maybe I'll roll a transfer if I don't know enough about Haaland, because I've got such a deep squad now. I've already got a benching headache this week. If you see my team,
who are you thinking of benching?
Maybe even Fernandes, but again,
wow.
If Fernandes does really well against Everton, that could change my mind. But I originally was going to bench one of the Brighton midfielders because they're away at Spurs, but Brighton, I just love Brighton from an attacking point of view. I'm a bit regretful that I didn't actually captain one of the Brighton assets, actually. One of the Brighton mids over Rashford. I know it's halfway through the game week and it's a bit hindsight. If Rashford goes and gets a brace at St James's Park, I'm obviously not going to be saying this, but yeah, I just really like Brighton from an attacking point of view. And even, away at Spurs, I was going to maybe bench March just because I had to bench someone obviously out of my front eight. But yeah, benching Fernandes at home to Everton will be tough, but I've got to bench someone out of that front eight. I don't know who, really. And I guess the lack of form for Fernandes would at least be a reason to bench him, whereas the Brighton boys have got the form, the much harder fixture, of course, away at Spurs compared to Everton at home. But yeah, tricky one, whether I go for form or fixture there.
It's a tough one because United have not been in good form, in good scoring form the last few game weeks as well. If you look at their last three, I mean, when was the last time they actually scored a goal? And that's your captain.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And I think that's why I said I'm a bit regretful about captaining Rashford over the Brighton boys. But I think I can't remember the exact score of it, but in Europe they obviously got battered by Liverpool, didn't they? And then they bounced back in Europe, I think it was. My mind's a bit fuzzy on the actual score. I think Rashford did bag. So it's not as if, as a team, in the Premier League, yes, they've not done one in the last few games, but there has been a game within that period where they have at least scored goals. And I think my thinking, because of the international break, Rashford was, compared to Haaland, who actually went away with his national team and had to leave that camp with an injury, which obviously signifies more of an issue, doesn't it? Because why bother? If you're just going to fake an international injury, you don't bother even joining up, exactly. Really. Whereas Rashford pretty much faked an injury, didn't he? So he could have a break, go to New York and do whatever else. So I thought United, fresh, refreshed, Rashford. But to be fair, it could still work out because it was, realistically, I was expecting more points out of Brentford at home for Rashford rather than Newcastle away. So anything you got away at Newcastle was always going to be the bonus. So yeah, could still work out.
That's true. That is true. And yeah, as you say, right now we're only, of course, in the middle of the game week. All those 15 games to come, which of course is going to alter your decisions. Guys, if you do want to see Wes's final team reveal on Friday before the deadline, then click the link in the description and go on over to the Fantasy Football Hub website. Because in the last video, Wes, we didn't know you were going to do a minus 16. Yeah, you mentioned a few of those individual transfers, but you wouldn't have known from that video alone that you were doing that. You would only have known that had you seen your team reveal article, right? So there you go.
That's right. I can't remember what day we recorded on, but yeah, I think I did say that I was very much up in the air that it could be.
Yeah, you did.
I think I said I could just do 1 or 2 transfers or maybe even 3 or 4. I don't think I ever said I'd do 5. So yeah, no. I surprised myself a little bit with the minus 16, but there was a lot of logic behind it and it wasn't some sort of rash, crazy decision. Whether it was correct or not you can debate that, but it was definitely thought through and stuff like that. So yeah.
Well, I would say so far it definitely looks correct. And not that you can really judge a decision based on hindsight, but obviously there was a lot of logic there and we have all those games to go and all the single players, all the transfers out that you've made have now finished. So, from now it's only up. And Absolutely. Of course, you're given the logic for the rest of the season as well. Well then, I think that's going to do it for that one, mate. Good stuff.
Nice one, mate.
Obviously, a little midweek video, a lot still up in the air. Again, link to go and see Wes's full team reveal. If you're watching this before the deadline, is down in the description below. Wes, thank you very much as always. Best of luck next game week. I'm very interested to see what you do because it sounds to me from this video as if you're going to maybe make one transfer, But then I know that I'll come back next week and you'd have made about 17. That's a track record you got now.
Yeah, I'll change them all and then I'll have to try and justify it on the next video as well.
Exactly. But it will do well for you. You're doing well recently. Back to back greens. So things are looking up.
Yeah. It should end up with a third green in a row, shouldn't it? Theoretically,
Absolutely.
With 15 players to play. If I don't end up on a green now, then I will just have to quit FPL, I think.
I think that would be extraordinarily unlucky. But yeah, looking good for another green, mate. All right. That is going to do it for this one, guys. Really hope you enjoyed it. Good luck with the rest of this game week and the next one. And we will see you all next week for the next one.